8 o'clock. We're still on time. Ah, 8:01. God damn it. It says we're live, though, so I might have been
Yes,
first online. Okay, we
it's
are
okay. Watch your
so.
tongue.
What's that?
You gotta watch your tongue.
I don't know. I had this coach who got a disclaimer right up front that when she's being authentic, certain things can happen. So
100%.
anyway, we maybe have an audience now. And I think your idea is wonderful to start with a little grounding practice. And just to tell everybody what we're doing first, I'm here, Dr. Michelle Veneziano with Sheva Rice, Batsheva Rice, Chevy. And we planned that you would read ahead on this sort of complicated, wonderful topic that's so wonderfully informative for adults and kids alike in so many ways. And you didn't read it, which I think is great, because you're going to be in the same place as the audience with what we're sharing. And then you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Hi, so I'm Batsheva Rice. I am a doula and body worker based in West Marin, about 5-minute drive from Michelle. Lucky me. And I recently, this is pre-COVID, I was feeling like a big calling to just root down where I am and call in more of like a global community. Because I have traveled the world. I'm from Australia. My accent might not tell you that. Um, and since the world got hit with this big shift that we're all in, I call it a bridge. Um, the calling has really woken up my instinct, my natural instinct to be able to be rooted and grounded where I am, and to reach those I care and love about all around the world. So I am doing virtual birth doula services where I educate women from everything A to Z on birth, prenatal, birth itself, and then postpartum. And tongue ties, and talking about the tongue is something that really, really inspires me a lot. I once took a Feldenkrais class, so we just focused on the tongue for an hour and a half. And the feeling that I felt after, the groundedness that I felt in my jaw, in myself, with even between my shoulders, was something that I just can't describe. I think that we're all gonna hopefully experience a little taste of that tonight.
I totally get it, and now I realize I have to have you teach me everything you learned. Okay, you guys, this is an exciting moment. Firstly, my friend Kathleen Evans Johnson is the one person I know is listening in. So sometimes she can't, she's on a phone, and I don't know if she can actually, I don't know. We'll see what she says. I had the last minute thought. Actually was able to get in touch with my professional tongue trainer, which is called the
Mm,
Orofacial Myologist. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, but a lot of my patients see her. So here comes Carly. Let's see what the screen looks like with an additional person. Hi, Carly. She has probably got to get her audio going, and I have to close the door because the heater is loud.
okay. While you're waiting, you could put one hand on your belly, one hand on your heart, taking the
Forgive us,
moment.
forgive us, people, because we actually are just figuring out how this whole live thing works. So it's all
Yeah.
real time. Carly, can you hear us or can you speak?
I'm here. I can see you.
Hi.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi, Carly.
So I
Hi.
just semi introduced you. I introduced myself, and then Chevy's here with me. She is a doula who is working remotely internationally, and I just love her so much. I think you're a really deeply gifted, perceptive, transformative human being. And so she has a community of doulas worldwide as well, especially East Coast, who are interested in all things tongue. And then you had a particular person who was asking you about tongue ties, and that person might be coming on also, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. But we can talk about all that. And Carly's dropping in because she's my tongue expert. Like, I kind of wing it. I know tongue from an osteopathic perspective. You know tongue from a doula perspective and maybe a Feldenkrais perspective. I think lactation consultants are so brilliant. There's so much to know there. So here we are. And then, Chevy, you're going to just guide us through a little grounding before
Yeah.
we get started.
Yeah, so we actually, for those who were participating a moment ago, I'm going to put one hand over our heart and just feel the rhythm. Feel your blood system, your heart system, your love system, your desire, your desires. And you can place another hand on your belly. And we're going to breathe in to our heart and our gut. Love, acceptance, peace of mind, peace of body. And as we exhale, which is the real focus of deep breathing, when we learn to exhale and breathe out worry, stress, fear, anything that can be holding you back, while you take one more inhale, reaching into that desire, your higher self, every way you want to be within yourself. And you'll find yourself in your next exhale, breathing out through your nose and grounding and rooting, knowing that you are everything you're meant to be right here, right now. You can always come back to this space. The space is within you. You own it. Allow yourself to be in this space whenever you need. And welcome to today's collective consciousness gathering. As a community, we interweave. We're all part of this great fabric, so we're all interweavers in this majestic time, in this majestic space. And just so grateful to have you, whoever's listening now, whoever's listening to the recording, being present right here, right now, in the golden hour with Michelle and Carly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think about 10 seconds ago, I felt my energy kind of drop and like anchor because I've been going pretty fast all day. So you can hear my voice now. I'm a little less, very excited.
Mm.
Can I see me or not?
No, no
Not
photo,
that.
no image. You have to turn your camera on.
Okay. I don't want to be rude, but my little puppy is looking like she's got to take a pee, so I'm just going to put her on my.
That's okay. We
Been
deal
around.
with all that is life here all the time.
Yeah.
This is raw, vulnerable showing up.
Let's see.
Yeah.
But we'll just start. We're just gonna start talking.
I'm not going anywhere. I'll take my phone with me. I'm just going to put her out on my back
Sounds
porch.
good. Sounds good. Okay, so I am an osteopath, a cranial osteopath, and I have found that, oh my God, when I got this email to study the tongue in depth, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, I was like, I have to open that. It was really clear. And then I opened it and it was this training back east, crack of dawn, expensive. And my head said, I'm not doing that. And my body said, you're doing it. So I did it. As a matter of fact, Carly flew with me, as well as a local dentist and another pediatric osteopath. And um, that was the beginning of my formal education, although it was actually when I was pregnant 15 years ago that I had my first interaction around understanding the tongue and its relevance to the development of the face. I was pregnant and I was the only osteopath available to help another osteopath be fitted with osteopathic orthodontics by Derek Nordstrom down in Hollister, California. And he's now retired, but he is the grand poobah of osteopathic orthodontics. And Your question came to me kind of out of the blue when a friend of yours asked you about the relevance of tongue tie.
Mm.
And how is breastfeeding and tongue tie relevant to issues that we experience at every age, right? So I don't know how I don't remember being told by my lactation consultant that breastfeeding would alter my child's life in so many ways. We know about the immune system support and the
Hmm.
bonding, but do we know how critical breastfeeding, the training of breastfeeding to have the tongue default on the roof of the mouth all the time for the rest of life, unless there was some derailment, the tongue resting fully on the pellet, especially the soft pellet at the posterior back of the throat, is it renders about a pound of pressure every time we swallow. 1 to 2,000 times a day, it's actually responsible for creating enough space for the teeth, as well as moving the face off the airway and having enough room to breathe, and also creating enough space in the face for the ears and the eyes and the sinuses. And so without those things, we end up needing orthodontics. But if the tongue's doing its job to begin with, we actually don't necessarily need orthodontics. We can often, in small kids and in many ages, do orthodontics without appliances because the tongue has such a powerful impact. And in adults who weren't breastfed or like myself, so I have had to work through personally a lot of these issues. Like I have a narrower airway by far than I would have had, so I've had to do some of
Mm.
my own face expansion.
Can you
Um,
show us a little bit of what a facial face expansion kind of looks like?
so when I did my first assessment, right, like a person, I would be comfortable with my, like this feels a little bit restricted. Ear over shoulder over hip, which is basically mountain pose in yoga. But if you
Hmm.
have a narrow airway, you almost can't quite, you don't necessarily have enough space to fully get air. So the person who didn't develop fully from not having been breastfed um, would have to be doing this to get air. So
Oh,
I have a ton of my patients who just kind of do this as a default posture, or they sit a lot and they end up doing this.
wow.
And that person has back problems. Like,
Mm,
what do you go to an
clearly.
osteopath for, right?
Yeah.
Find problems, but actually, that's the least of it. And I found over and over that I couldn't really get very far with treating people's backs, especially their pelvis, if I didn't sort out this head business, because we
Yeah.
know that if this is restricted, the pelvis is restricted. It's all one midline, right?
Hmm.
Cranium sacrum,
Yeah.
craniosacral. It's one
The
mechanism
spine.
that does this all the time, ideally, and not so much in modern people. I just want to pause
Hmm.
and say Arlene Anderson Sacerdote. Ah, I'm sure I butchered that name, is watching us, and I'm excited about that. And maybe if she wants to, she could type the phonetic pronunciation of her name. So glad to have you. Um, so did that answer your question?
Yes, I guess it answered my question. We got a good visual on the side there, and I see a lot of people that are, especially when they're pregnant, they're carrying a lot of weight forward, and then their whole spine has to restructure, and they're like trying to balance on all of this with all the gravity, and then, all the head facial stuff really comes out most, and especially with their pelvis jaw connection and how that comes into play into birth. I'd love to go there later when we
Mhm.
touch on that.
That's really so. What I do with pregnant women is the whole of osteopathy is equalizing the body into a neutral, balanced system. So a lot
Yeah.
of the time, the weight is proportioned oddly because what we actually do when the nervous system is overstimulated or we're structurally compromised is the body kind of like shrink wraps, and then we can't adapt and be fluid
Yeah.
and real. So when I reset people and release the cranium and sacrum and allow the whole body to integrate into a more literally less viscous fluid I was going to say structure, but I like to call the body a behavior. Like we're really more verb than noun when we're in our
Mhm.
natural state. So when I do that, and then the mom can kind of like, hey, Carly, you're back.
Hey, I'm trying to put my camera on. I can't figure it out. Sorry, I just clicked out of this whole thing. How do I
Oh,
get my camera on? Do you know?
right. Well, if you're on Zoom on your phone, there's a little camera icon at the bottom, and you just have to hit allow camera.
Okay. All right. Let me keep playing here.
And I'm going to get to see your cute face. And then I want to see the. I remember her last dog, Jazzy, who comes to all of her patient appointments. But what's your new dog's name?
We have a new puppy now. This is Bella's here,
Oh
but
yeah, Bella.
so you haven't met her, I don't think yet. You'll see her.
Okay, you guys. While Carly's doing that, we have Dina Wright and Manuka or Manucha Ferris Blank. That's amazing. Um, so what you just asked me, Chevy, was we're working out how tongue function. It's completely related, by the way, to the issues that pregnant women have when their like anatomy is kind of shrink wrapped. We shrink wrap, and then we can't quite like set. There you are. We can't quite distribute our weight in an adaptable way, and then we end up like twisted or contorted, or usually we're crowded around the front. That's what we tend to do. We oh, I can't hear you, Chevy. Why?
Oh,
Oh, now I hear you.
and you get that lower back band like tightness as well when every.
Oh, God, I know. So midline is everything. We have to neutralize all the forces and allow everything to stack. And then we can kind of like be 3D again and be nuanced in the way our weight falls into our feet while we're walking. Because if we can do that, then we're kind of using the body like a spring. Like we're able to recruit every cell in the body with every motion. It's very yogic, it's very martial.
Raise us than ourselves. We're just in gravity. We're finding our dance.
Exactly, but the point is, if if our whole body can participate, then it stays awake. So our circulation stays good, and we feel resourced. So our nervous system stabilizes, and then we're more available. Right now, the interesting thing is, oh,
Oh,
you're
so
talking.
with me when I was early postpartum, and I was struggling with back pain, and um, right in my mid back right here, I was feeling like sharp, and it really shaped me for the coming months until now. This really has been a resource, and I'd like you to go deeper to kind of guide me like what to follow that. So um, when when I'm sitting, I'm in pain. So you said find a seat that isn't painful. Find a way to sit that doesn't feel like in pain. And then I realized it's not sitting; it's allowing your spine to like
Yeah, for
find.
some reason your audio keeps cutting out. It's probably not anything you're doing. It's just a thing. But I get what you're saying. Can I riff with that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, yes, exactly.
Good thing I
Fine.
have I talk with my hands.
No, it's okay. It's just your audio cuts out. And then
So,
look, Carly's doing a really she's working with it right now. I can tell you're like, where am I in my midline?
I
I
know.
think of the sit bones, you guys, as ball bearings. And this is a very osteopathic, martial, and yogic concept where we're not sitting up straight. We're actually tracking a sweet spot that's ever changing, where the body actually wants to be in subtle spiral motion all the time, the way babies are. They're never still, they're never static. They're like, oh, no.
I know.
Everything's kind of like awake and alive and participating. And so if we can do this with ourselves, we stay young, straight up, and we also get fit. Like I've really been diving deep lately and just going for it with my flow practice. And I've been amazed. Like I've been trimming down because I'm doing this really assertively all day. I'm like no holds barred. I'm just gonna be an amoeba all the time. I'm not in my office. It doesn't matter if I look funny. I can do all of this though imperceptibly, almost like a consciousness state if people are around. Like I never sit static. I'm always working it and it
Mm.
because it feels amazing. It's like I can feel like this tingling up my whole back and my feet are buzzing and it's
Should we all
like,
try and practice this together? Whoever's on this live,
yeah, let's
like
do it.
feel your feet.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna so definitely feel your feet. It actually helps to visualize roots. Like when I visualize roots, I can feel my upper body's feeling more supported. Like all of a sudden I start doing this. Whoa,
Yeah.
my body wants to like unravel all kinds of funny stuff and just express itself. And then I feel like the minute your attention's in your feet, you're starting to light up the efferent and afferent neural pathways. Your legs will wake up. And you'll
Mm.
start to feel like a nervous system shift. You'll start to feel maybe you can feel right now some pulsing and some heat. I feel, especially in my right thigh on the top. It's so interesting. You never know what you're gonna get. And then so I take my hand and I sit on my hands. And for those of you who don't know what sit bones are, if you sit on your hands, you're gonna be feeling these two big ball bearing like bones and just tune into where those contact the chair, and you can imagine that they're like you're pivoting around on them like ball bearings, and um, this allows you to adapt in real time to whatever is coming through. Now, little piece here, it really helps if your hips are higher than your knees. You know how we do in yoga. Because if you're sitting in a hole, it's going to be pretty challenging to just rise in a neutral way. So your seat has a wedge that is a nice thick rubber wedge, not memory foam. Yeah, show everybody. I have a different kind of chair, but that wedge is sturdy as crazy. And I put the link for that on my website. I don't make money on these things. I make like something ridiculous, like 2% that my web guy uses to. I pay him to keep the links live with that. Yogesh is watching. Anybody who's watching, type things to us, and we'll. Especially if you have questions, and I'll look at them.
I have a
Um,
on the tip of my tongue. One, two from friends and clients of mine, and then I have a few more. But could I start with theirs?
Yeah, let me finish the thing we're setting in motion because we're going to sit in this for the rest of our talk, right? We've got our feet. We can really feel like I shifted a little and my feet are touching the floor in a new place, so it's a little cool, which I just noticed. My noticing is really alert now because I've been in flow for a while. And then I see my roots. I can feel my roots more on the right side. Interesting. And then moving up, I can feel my legs. They're pretty awake. I'm on my ball bearings on my sit bones. My spine starting to feel like a serpent rising toward the sky while the roots move into the earth. And then I like, a little pelvic floor action. No gripping, but those deep pelvic stabilizers and the belly button, those muscles kind of meeting the spine to support that serpent like behavior. And then that moves up. I always have the heart awake. You woke it up with our initial practice. That's really like tuning into what you're grateful for, really has us dropping in like just appreciation and people I love. And then the tongue on the roof of the mouth locks it all in. It's like the rudder of the whole ship of this serpent. I just had this image of like Ulysses' ship with the sirens, and there's something in there where I know in the Vedic teachings that the tongue on the roof of the mouth maintains the openness of the chakra there that has the heart able to connect with the pineal, and it's actually a gate in the microcosmic orbit in Taoist teachings where the whole cycle of vital energy requires the availability and wave transmissibility through the palate. So if people have restrictions here, which most of us do from sitting so much, or we weren't breastfed, or we were tongue tied, so the tongue couldn't do its work of a pound of pressure 1 to 2,000 times a day, we're missing this whole chunk. It's like a big blank spot. It's like it sort of quiets this entire circulatory potential. And then if you slap braces on top of it, because the tongue wasn't there to help grow the teeth, it's insult to injury quite a bit. And I see Carly kind of nodding. So
It's the basic of breathing. That's number one. And ongoing pump.
Oh yeah, I left the breathing out.
I'm on forever. Now the tongue, the pressure of the tongue on the palate relaxes the pressure in the cheek, the rest of the oral cavity. When the tongue slips down, the cheeks will pressure in, and that's constriction all the way down. We constrict when we don't breathe properly. We constrict, our whole head kind of squeezes to the midline. This is my and we narrow, and that starts the beginning of a narrow palate and a narrow airway, and you know, I clicked out a bit on the breastfeeding, but breastfeeding is just it's the beginning of complete facial development. Just the undulating movement of a breastfeeding that pulls the jaws forward. We want facial growth is always going to be forward, and it creates lip seal so that we have to nasal breathe. It creates the correct swallow because we have to lift up when we press against the teat. It's more in the back palate. And that's a place that nobody would normally lift their tongue and build that muscle strength. So if you're breastfed, you get an edge up on getting that established. It doesn't necessarily stay real strong. It can be thrown off easily, but yeah, I mean, I could talk on that for hours, but.
Yeah, I actually see kids who are breastfed and their faces are beautiful, and then they hit their head and maybe they compress the nerve to the tongue, or that's really actually a pretty common scenario. So they have good development, but then the whole thing's locked up and the tongue hasn't been able to take its place in the arch. And then, like Carly said, the very powerful muscles of swallowing, the masseter muscles, every time we swallow, they push in a lot. And so people's palates can start to narrow this way, and within a year, people their facial balance can change pretty dramatically. I have some great images. I have one great comparative profile of a nasal breather to a mouth breather, right? A mouth breather is sometimes a person with a tongue tie, frenum restriction, either here where they can't seal their lips above or below, or now I'm going to get real vulnerable here because I had one of these of sorts. I had like the inability to open my mouth when my tongue was all the way on the roof of my mouth. I wasn't able to open it to half the dimension of my full height. That's the measurement. Like you test your patients, Carly taught me this. If you have a full open mouth, and when your tongue is fully on the roof of your mouth, you ought to be able to get at least half this vertical dimension.
Wow. That's powerful stuff. That's an interesting test.
So this was my frenum before. I mean, it is now. It's been cut. So I'm actually not cut. I'm going to explain what this experience was like for me because I loved it. And it really sounds terrible, and it's not that terrible at all. I believe, Carly, you were present for mine. I was in David Blendy's office in San Francisco. So, like, you see it's quite a long band of tissue in the front. Now, from my understanding, and Carly might chime in on this, but cutting it is a good way to create a scar and have it, adheres back down. What my dentist did was took a bovie, a cautery unit, and just trim the tissue. It burns and there's smoke, but they numb it up, and then they just shave. Can you see?
Can't. Oh, right there. Yeah. Interesting.
They shave it thinner, and he went as far back as he could before he was maybe going to compromise a blood vessel. So he said, let's stop for now, and then the blood vessels will recede, and then we'll get to go in again at a later date. So what Carly does is she'll assess someone beforehand, and she'll say, well, let's work on stretching it out so that the procedure can really be more effective. I find, or I think I learned from you, Carly, that frenums aren't really correctable by stretching.
Well, frenums are embryonic connective tissue that if that tissue really stretch, but the muscles, the blood vessels, and the skin does. And I notice if you work the cranium and use somebody like Michelle, I work the cranial nerves. I'd say somebody who's really solid, I don't know what really that means, but if they're stable in their head and their head moves, last 5 years or so, I rarely even refer out for frenectomy because I can get the tongue to do everything I need to do. So unless they're really, really restricted, but some frenum, you had just a minor little release. Some frenums, go all the way back to, excuse me. Hey, you guys, cut it out. Will go all the way back to the posterior part of the tongue. And so those are much more involved and much more of a surgical procedure. And those all frenums, as far as frenum releases, should work with somebody like me, because if you release a frenum on somebody who's really tethered, their tongue will just drop right down to the floor of the mouth, and then it will likely scar tissue down, and then scar tissue is like rock. So sometimes they're even worse off than before they started. Mm-hmm. They've got to learn what to do with their tongue, where to go, where their midline is. We've got to build that system so that they can hold their tongue up for at least 2 weeks until they've scarred into their new location. So, and that's really important. And a lot of dentists don't even look at the frenum, much less know that part of it, unless they've kind of been around some people like Michelle and I, at least in this area.
Great. So 2 things I thought of while you were talking. One thing is I wanted to tell everyone that Carly is one of the most highly educated orofacial myologists in the country. I think you're like one of the original studiers of this art going back several decades. And she works remotely as well, so available for consult. And then what else did I want to say? Well, just to clarify for maybe those of you who hopped on later, when we're working with people who have, a lot of times when people fail orthodontics, it's because there's just so much more going on than needing to straighten the teeth, right? So they'll have headaches, they'll have sleep disruption, they'll have nervous system problems, sleep disruption, anxiety, because the tongue isn't able to make it to the palate maybe at all because of a tongue tie. Remember, every time we swallow, it's like recapitulating the breastfeeding experience. It's deeply self-soothing. That's why kids who maybe have a tongue tie or whose heads are so dense from a birth trauma that breastfeeding is not enough to release the face and free up the nervous system, they'll use another form of self-soothing like a pacifier or thumb sucking. And sometimes that's just a really sensitive kid too. It's not necessarily pathology, but it's a sign that, oh, my child is needing more support in some way, shape, or form. But I started this all out to say that, and I'm going to share an article down below that really encompasses the interconnection of all of these pieces. One is the dentist, that hopefully, maybe 5 or 10% of dentists understand it's not the teeth. It's a full body pattern, an underdevelopment issue that affects vision and hearing and airway and brain and everything. And then they'll have, ideally, the patient see an osteopath like myself to free up all of the physical aspects to render the body moldable. We have to be able to rebalance everything and really start off, pick up where development left off. So the structures have to be moldable. For the tongue, right? I teach adults. I unlock their heads. That's the whole body. It's every cell or no cell without any treatment, as far as I'm concerned, because the body is one substance. We get the body synchronized and breathing again, so it remembers how to behave like a fluid structure. And then the tongue has a chance to actually, significantly begin to redirect the forces in the body, so that the face can start to rebalance the whole head. Let me not say face. This is amazing, right? Because they say, oh, if you fix the tongue, but you're over 25 or over 20, you're not likely to be able to remodel too much of the body. But with osteopathy, you simulate being younger because you reverse that shrink wrap thing that happens with age as we begin to kind of not be as present in our bodies, and we've maybe sat a lot and we have accumulated injuries and maybe we're dehydrated, and all of a sudden, adults are a little more. But I have older folks who are super buoyant and expanded. Part of it's their nature, honestly. A lot of this fluid, not fluid, is right between the ears. It's like, how do you feel about yourself? Like, can you identify? It's an awakeness thing. Like, if you are embracing of life and you just really embody aliveness, people
it's
have
vibrational.
Yeah, they have lightness of spirit, and it comes through every cell in their body, and it's a beautiful thing to behold. I find it. Oh my gosh, my friend Alicia's on. Hi everybody, feel free to ask questions, but we're just kind of riffing. It's 37 minutes, and yeah, go ahead.
Okay, a couple questions. One is a question that I received, and it was more like a statement rather than a question. So I'll kind of formulate the question, and you can kind of respond to what I was given. So a friend of mine, was told by her orthodontist that she's going to need a tongue clip. What do you call to clip a
Frenectomy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she
freedom release.
She messaged me. She was looking for an osteopathic opinion. And she didn't know that we were in contact. And I said, fabulous. We're going to raise the awareness on our live because I'm speaking to an osteopath about this. And here we get to address this kind of scenario when everyone has their scope. An orthodontist with its procedure, its protocol. This is kind of giving a background to, and this is why it's also similar to birth, because there's so many different practices around birth. There's so many different practices around tongue awareness and how we're gonna what works best for you as a person, and what feels truest to how you, Michelle, would address the scenario, being that you did get a little bit of a frenulum
freedom release. Well, everyone's so unique. I wish she was on, because I mean, a lot that I can actually glean kind of remotely. I can actually feel and see like whether or not people's cranial mechanisms are moving. I don't know how I do it, but it's like there's a breath, not breath kind of quality about their system. They're bright or not so bright. But she, like Carly just said, it's really important to do prep work before such a procedure and then care afterwards to make sure it doesn't scar back down. And an assessment with Carly remotely might be a really good idea, because maybe she wouldn't even need to have the procedure.
And there's so many different ways of freedoms are so different.
Yeah.
They're so complicated. It's not one thing you look at and they're all the same. They're different attachments. Some of them are on the tip of the tongue, some of them are way in the back, some of them are really fat, some of them there's 2 and 3 frenums. It's where they attach on so imagine the frenum runs the whole floor of the mouth. So it may be in the back posterior tongue. It may limit speech, it may limit breathing. I mean, so everything is different. And when I'm out for a frenum release to a surgeon, I'm telling them everything. I have moved every muscle in that face, and he gets a report like they can't do this. This happens when they do this. So he knows what to do. And sometimes I assist on him. I mean, we've got our fingers inside there. We really, really do a good job. So yeah, every case is different. So, and
Yeah.
I always try to not do it because it is a midline scar that we would like to avoid. But I think weighing the odds on how wonderful they can be, they're life-changing on people that really need them.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I want to say Valerie Fowler just hopped on, who I love. She's a child development specialist, and Alicia Avalos, who was my nurse practitioner, one of my nurses at my former family practice clinic that I used to work at. So wonderful people on, and feel free to ask questions, you guys. So I hope that helps regarding your friend.
Yeah, that's great. Carly can definitely, I'm sure, help over the phone remotely. That would be
Well,
awesome.
there's so many things to think about that I want to applaud this dentist, he or she, because even really looking at that is a step in the right direction. And then there's just a lot more than most dentists realize.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I have patients come to me, and because 90+% of dentists don't understand how teeth and facial development and breastfeeding and tongue function and airway all connect, as well as for me, full spine, all the spinal mechanics. And they'll tell their patients one thing, like if you have to put a kid in headgear, if you have to do all of this really aggressive,
Restrictive.
the body's not on board. Like the body, if you're working with the body, it just is a much more forgiving and organic experience. The people do not need to have pain when they're doing orthodontics. And then once we get the body balanced and the tongue restored to doing its job of maintaining this oral volume and pumping, every time the tongue hits the roof of the mouth during a proper swallow, there's a pound of pressure running a wave through the whole skull. Every cell feels it. The brain gets to have more lymphatic drainage. The nerves are soothed. The vagus nerve innervates the soft pellet at the back. So you're directly affecting the parasympathetic nervous system. And then there's the part where I just had something so good to go to. Oh, yeah. I have this YouTube. I was going to play it because we're not monetizing this, but I have this amazing video of an opera singer, like a functional MRI lateral, where they're singing, just singing. You can see waves of motion going through the whole brain, and like it's like the whole being is pulsing, like they're a fluid. And then I have another one, I'll show them in another Zoom. I don't have this ready right now, but of a heartbeat echoing through the entire brain. So if forces that tiny can have such a profound effect, just imagine what a pound of pressure 1,000 to 2,000 times a day does in terms of brain health and nervous system soothing, and obviously, as we've been saying, remodeling the face, making space for all these critical structures. So I wanted to show you guys what it looks like when the tongue's in the right place, right?
Can I say one thing, Michelle, until you move off on that subject? Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. When you said orthodontics and a head's not ready for all the restrictions that the headgear and such, or even braces, anything that's fixed in a head, like Michelle would say, the head can't move. There's got to be motion in the cranium. But another example of the tongue would be a tongue thrust, which is a typical tongue that doesn't move properly. So it usually moves forward in a thrusting manner. So if it's moving forward, it's usually touching the teeth and pushing them. The orthodontist is trying to throw them back. So it's a fight. The tongue's going one direction, pushing the teeth in a crooked manner, and the orthodontist is trying to throw them back. And they fight that way the whole way through braces. And it's just horrible. It takes forever. So that's another back and forth.
It's huge that they would attempt to correct something, the underlying cause of which is right there in front of your face, and then they don't correct it. They don't correct the tongue thrust to restore the tongue to going northward. And so the kid will be uncomfortable forever, or the adult, and also the orthodontics are likely to fail, and then the retainer will be required for life. Whereas with the properly functioning tongue, the tongue is the retainer, and we don't need to have any sort of fixed device. I recommend never along the palate, because that dampens this whole wave motion. So the interesting thing is, I understand a lot of people, and myself included, are more comfortable having something separate the teeth at night. It's actually kind of good for the nervous system. Carly taught me that dental enamel is mineralized, very similar to gold. So the contacting of the teeth while we sleep is like an electrical, potentially disruptive, right? This is big. So I had the most fun. I think it was you, maybe Carly, who taught me that there's this convention of creating mouth guards. Who out there doesn't have a mouth guard? I'm looking at my audience.
Well, actually, I want to talk to you about the mouth guard that I was prescribed that I could never use. I'll talk to you about that.
Yeah, sure. So mouth guards are conventionally rigid, and they're created for the upper teeth. I have not yet found a dentist, and I keep looking, who can explain to me the medical justification for making a retainer for the upper teeth. They don't have one, because there isn't one.
Well, they were taught that in school.
They were taught that in school, so they just do it. So I say to patients, no worries, please go back to your dentist and ask them to switch it for the lower teeth. And that works out really well, and I haven't had a dentist yet like complain. They're like, okay, whatever, I don't know why. And then why not? And they can't give me an answer. So there's no, it's kind of a fun little research. And then I actually really do prefer any device to be flexible. My preference, non-toxic material.
Like silicone?
What do you think, Carly, about?
I would like to know why everybody even needs an appliance to begin with. So, I'm about getting more deeper to the problem. Are they clenching their teeth? That's the head talking to you. That's something that's predictably can be removed by a really good biologist. And it's that grip. They're gripping. They're improperly triggering their trigeminal nerve, and it's usually putting them into sympathetic nervous system, and it's all stress related. And it's easy to remove. It takes a while because they do it so automatically. But that would be the most reason people would wear a retainer, because they clench and grind, and their dentists are enamel doctors, and they want to save the enamel, which is for good reason, because enamel doesn't grow back. But I like to look deeper and see if we can correct the clenching and grinding. The other reason would be a retainer. And if the tongue and the swallow in the breathing and all the habitual, any kind of noxious habits are removed, the teeth should stay just as straight on their own with their own head and tongue support as they would with a retainer, honestly.
So let me ask you this. My night guard's not for retaining anything. It's for sort of creating a nice neutral vertical dimension for my brain. It's like there's a certain height where my whole face relaxes. Are you saying that if I had my right oral myologic fitness, I might get the same result without needing to have anything on my lower teeth?
What device do you have on?
I just have a plain night guard, just a teeth, like that keeps my teeth maybe 1.5 millimeters separate, and maybe gives me a little more oral volume because I don't have a ton because of my not being breastfed myself.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So if are your teeth touching naturally at night, do you think?
I think so. I think so.
So that would be nice, but I'd like to try and correct it, honestly. So you have your own natural freeway space. We call that in the dental world. It's a natural.
But, well, I didn't have, like, Carly and I worked together years ago, and I got a lot of my issues resolved between my osteopathic appliance called the ALF, Advanced Light Wire Functional Appliance. And then I was good. So I kind of moved on. And I didn't do everything. Like, a lot of times we can get 15% in the good direction, and then we're functional and we don't expect perfection. We just want to be able to, go about our lives.
The reduction in pain is worth millions of dollars. Like, you can't put a number on a reduction in pain.
it was nervous system for me. Like
Yeah.
I was getting air well, and it was just things fell into place. And then in the last few months, I've been like, something's different. I don't know. I do some of the exercises Carly gave me ongoing. Like I'm always suctioning my palate while I'm driving, and I try to see if I can get good big caves of grooves on either side of the midline of my tongue. That's called caves, to work the muscle. And with the tongue that developed outside the palate, my tongue is barely big, and there's barely enough room for this to happen. But I actually can do it on both sides. I can get a cave on both sides simultaneously, and then working that tongue. I'm not going to do this one because it would be too much, but surfboard where it's like a serpent. It comes out and
Carly, can you show us that? I was doing that with my son today. We were having fun with our tongues.
I'm bleeding with pride over here.
Oh, because I remember what you taught me. So, all right, I'm going to do one for you, but I'm like, okay. So this one where you like,
so surfboard tongue, okay, is no. Go ahead. You
try to really make the tongue like really pointed, like it takes a lot of agility and sort of nuanced strength. But you do it. I don't want to do it.
I'll do it if Carly directs me.
All right, I'll do it. Go ahead.
I'll do it because it's really hard just to pop in and do it. I think it does take a little practice for most people.
So you can't talk with your tongue out there.
If we look at tongue, just the muscles within the tongue, there are long muscles along the lateral border. And when the tongue is not used properly, many times it moves, it goes in a horizontal direction, either anteriorly or laterally or both. So it actually moves wide with its movement. It pulls itself wide, and that creates a wide tongue. Form follows function. And now we've got a wide tongue that didn't build the palate. So the tongue hits the palate, widens that midline suture. So it didn't develop the width, and now the tongue's too big, the palate's too narrow. And so we narrow the tongue back as we're kind of fixing the whole face. And the way you do it is you kind of focus on those two lateral muscles that run the whole length of the tongue. And you sit really tall and straight, and you pull your tongue. You make I call it arrowhead tongue or surfboard tongue. I have little arrowheads that I show my kids so they can mimic that shape, a point. And it looks hard.
It's hard.
I don't know. Try to get a flashlight. So I'm squeezed. Can you guys see?
Yeah.
You can see.
So you have to kind of come out and just hold it parallel to the floor. That takes some, strength right there. And then it's really taut and hard. I mean, I could knock it with a little stick and it wouldn't.
It looks like a serpent coming out, and you can use the tip to push, like literally, like push like it's a solid object. Yeah, I see it. But you need to lift a little, straight out. I think we're good with that one now, guys. I do want to show you something because I'm really good at it. You want to see?
Yes.
Okay, so a proper swallow, so the people who have these big waddles of tissue under here, they're not using their tongue. I can spot them from across the street. They're usually this, they have the waddle, their butt is flat. It's all one thing. The mechanism has to come back to, vertical, recruit posterior, anterior, and then they grow their back body muscles. So this is actually a way I correct. You can get a lot of body toning because when the tongue's doing its right thing, you're using everything all the time. You're able to walk correctly in a way that recruits the back body muscles the way most of us do not. So we're going to do another Zoom on that. And the whole natural walking and natural, like the full it's such an amazing fitness program that happens just while you're going about your day, and it's absolutely essential and so enjoyable. And then the tongue is part of it. That's another piece of this whole mechanism. That's all one thing. So when the tongue is in where it needs to be, right, full contact front to back, except about a pinky's width from the teeth, not touching the teeth ideally, unless your tongue is too big to do that, which mine practically is because they grew separate, right? My tongue's oversized for a space I have above. But when I do the right swallow, see if you can see this. Like, my finger can almost go up inside here. Right? I have ear, shoulder. I'm in mountain pose. And I swallow. And I can get almost a finger. Wait, let me do it again. I'll have to do it like this because of the camera. Can you see? Wait.
Are you talking about when you lift your tongue for that final little punch? It lifts up here. Uh-huh. Yeah, but don't. You're kind of making a little bit of a double chin. So pull your chin out. There you go. Now we can see. But there you go. Good. Yes.
There it is. It's hard to swallow with my chin up. I like to tuck it, but can you see it go up?
What are you saying? What are you saying that happens when you're swallowing? Are you able to like get your fingers in a groove?
My finger almost goes completely hidden. It can go. My tongue. If you look on YouTube for tongue training, there's a term called mewing. There's a whole bunch of videos where they say like your tongue needs to be so intimate with the soft palate that you have this groove underneath in the back. This really nice, like the tongue lifts so far up to the roof of the mouth that there's a space where the neck meets the chin that my finger can almost fill. It didn't used to do that. So that's a function of my the strength that I've developed, right? And then every time we swallow, the exercise that all becomes is exercise. So we actually get a nice face tightening. Like this is really natural facelift territory.
A correct swallow lifts up and back. So you use 57 facial muscles to do that. So it's a very uplifting beauty. There's a big
Can
beauty.
I say that you both look at least like 30 years younger than I don't know your ages, but you both look like I know that you have years and decades of experience, so it's hard to measure, but I feel like you both have that.
Well, youthful kind of like, I definitely have way more energy in my body from knowing all of these things and employing them all the time. So let's see, it's 8:57. I want to summarize here, and we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. We could totally go a little over, no worries. Juan Villemas, I hope I got that right, is watching, which is amazing. And anyone who wants to ask a question before we wrap up, just by typing it in on Facebook, go ahead and do that. For instance, like, what do you want us to talk about next? That's a valid question. So the whole purpose of this study group that you're all logged into for me is to practice teaching this complicated stuff for me. I love it. It's so fun. It's really fun to talk about. It's deep. There's so many levels, and I'm just so excited about how much I know this material can transform lives, and it's mostly do it yourself. I mean, it developed for me when I was unable to really see all of my patients in a timely manner. So many people have so many issues, and I would say do these series of things on your own to just stabilize, and I'll work you into my schedule as I can. Well, half the time people were like, oh, I'm good now. I don't need to schedule. And I'm like, oh, we're on to something here. So I've been developing this a little bit more. It's 6 things. I listed them in the banner of this Facebook group. It's 6 things when done simultaneously, having to do with what we do with our attention, right? Attention connected with every cell, the natural sitting, the natural walking, the serpent flow, feminine behaviors during our activities of daily living. That's the dynamic movement part. Not sitting in a hole is part of that. That's why we elevate our sit bones. So there's a little bit more than 90 degrees when we're sitting in a chair, right? You don't want to sit like this. Everything locks up. You always want to have just like in yoga, they give us a little blanket and we create neutral spine much more easily. And then the tongue work, absolutely essential. Moving into the breath work, which is keeping the breath moving throughout the whole body, and especially the kidney, renal, adrenal, the diaphragms, cranial diaphragm, thoracic diaphragm, pelvic diaphragm actually all synchronize in this state. Once that happens, right, we're soothing, we're massaging this adrenal, kidney, renal. Kidney is the renal system. Adrenal, adrenaline. This is one of the ways we keep our cortisol low, keep our adrenaline low. The diaphragm should be massaging that mechanism all the time, but most of us are holding our breath. So when we refresh the system to this flow motion baseline, default, it's like setting the idle on a car. We want to live there. Then every cell in our body is getting a constant healing, and we're moving energy, and we're getting our blood flow, and we're getting lubrication of every joint, and we're just having a lot more fun. We're a lot more available. We don't need to be a career patient. You know, we want to, if someone comes to me and they're like, oh, I need to see a chiropractor every week. Oh, I've been a patient for 10 years. I've been having to, I'm like, what's wrong with this picture? The body heals itself. When everything's available, even serious restrictions, you know, when the body starts to shift, like I metaphorically say, from particle to light, which by the way, it does. I mean, I've looked at the physics and the quantum theory and the mathematics. It actually does. That's how matter behaves. We can tap that quantum potential easier than we think. It's simply our natural resting state. And we do all of these things. Like for me, these 6 things are just a convenient way of organizing the basics. But we are simply remembering our native state. It doesn't take much to have that, like, it's like riding a bicycle. Oh, right, that's who I am. We're not learning anything new or particularly esoteric. We just have to trigger that body's native memory, and it's like, oh, and then the lights come on, and then we're available to actually, you know, create and enjoy our lives and connect with others and do the good work that's needed on the planet right now. We don't need to be wasting our time being patients, I don't think. So I think it's 9:02. Wow, that went by really quickly.
Yeah.
I want you both to repeat what your offerings are, and we'll each kind of offer professionally to assist people through difficult aspects of their self-healing. I love to be available to help people through tough spots, not to do things for them. Otherwise, honestly, I'm bored immediately. I used to not know why. I'm like, why am I burned out and bored? Oh my God, I'm fixing everyone and they're not empowered. Like as soon as that starts happening, I start to fall asleep. Oh, I must be doing too much. Like, let me teach you your stuff. It's way more fun for them too, way more pleasurable. Pleasure being like the really unifying theme of everything that I do. And then so obviously when I had a doula, I was so grateful for being willing to receive that kind of holding and support when I was pregnant. So I'm really excited too that you'll be out in the world doing that work and be informed by this layer of information, and that we can be networking and maybe also with some other people who've chimed in. And then Carly, you're both available for remote conferencing, as am I, on a limited basis. And I have a huge network of people who also are available if I'm not. So can you repeat, both of you, like what kinds of things you do remotely with your clients, and a little just summary wrap up about yourself, and then we'll be done. Are you there, Sheva?
I'm here. I was going to let Carly go first.
Oh, okay.
Are there mostly other doulas on FaceTime watch with us right now?
We'll find out.
Oh, okay, so we don't know. It's Brad, because I was going to.
We don't really know. I know I see like 5 people I know, and it's so fun, and at least 6 or 7 people I don't know.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I'm an oral facial myologist. I work with the development of the face, the airway, breathing, the cranial nerves, the muscles of the face, and I work with all ages. If there's doulas there, who I love working with anybody that has anything to do with babies, and they you know, and there's any questions about the frenum or the baby reflexes, that's the kind of the areas I would help with. I think it's really important that every baby that even has a little clip with a scissors by a doctor at birth just to be able to latch and breastfeed should be followed up by somebody like me, because they always need a little bit more. I mean, it just really is a good idea. So that would be my main thing I'd like to get across to anybody who's a lactation specialist or a doula that might be watching.
And you do sessions by Skype or Zoom?
With people all over the world. So I'd be happy to answer any questions at all. Just email me, dentalcarly@gmail.com.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me, Michelle.
Yeah. And
Hi. Yes. So when my husband and I got married, he was a farmer and I was a doula. So I made a new email address called farmdoula@gmail.com because I had a vision that we'd be living on this farm, having babies, human babies and animal babies, and we're currently actually we're about to have goat babies.
Aww.
So we've actually come as far as a farming dream, and really my birthing dream of having a birthing center in the mountains, in the forest, with the water rushing under us is slowly forming. And at the same time, in the global scenario that we're all in, I really feel that having as much online support as possible, is your go for this time that we're in, because as we're all kind of finding our way differently than we used to, it's just good to have somebody you can call to have that support. And so my offering is that I do virtual birth support, but really it's birth in all shapes and all forms. I've been a doula for over 10 years and witnessed a lot and experienced a lot, and had my own 2 children in the last few years. And I feel like birth is not just giving birth to a baby. Birth is a new project. Birth is going through a trauma and coming out the other end and feeling alive again and feeling reborn. Birth is so many things, and I really like to hold space for people going through all sorts of births. And I do in-person births in the Bay Area. We'll travel on a jet plane, but the main thing is the online virtual community, and community is immunity. And I build a network for my clients. I make sure wherever they are in the world, they have their supportive people, either physically around them or emotionally and spiritually around them, so that they can go through this time with peace and clarity. Sorry,
Where are you right now? Where do you live?
What? I live in Forest Knolls, West Marin.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
Where do you live?
I live in Corte Madera.
Oh, cool! I'll see you. We can go out for tea.
A real exotic somewhere in some.
We should all go out for tea sometime.
Yeah, we're all in Mill Valley. I mean, Marin. We're all in Marin County, which is north of San Francisco. Not much. My office is 15 minutes from the city, actually. I love that, Chevy. And do you want to just say quickly your email for someone who could write it down? Yes. You said farmdoula@gmail.com?
Yes, farmdoula, FARMDOULA @gmail.com. And I'm also on Facebook, my page, which needs to be updated, but is Baby Moon Steps. And you could find a little bit more about me. You can find me on Facebook. You can reach out. I'm really good at WhatsApp, so get my phone number somehow through email or Facebook.
I'm going to type all that, your email addresses, as well as the article that I wrote for my patients, because I was like, I'm going to die. I'm repeating so much stuff all the time. And then I have a diagram. I wish I had more visuals, but I actually have a whole lecture I've given to medical conferences and on this subject. But and Carly has some pretty in-depth work that you also do. Oh my gosh, my friend Jody is. Let's see. Wait, we have a little comment here from the Shell. Your class is amazing. My best friend, she calls me Shell. Carly and you together are so powerful. I'm off to sleep. It's 11 in Chicago. Thank you, my darling. I hope you hear me speaking to you and sending you a kiss for a good sleep tonight. And now I'm all like, all that love kind of like made me kind of, okay,
Oxytocin.
here I am. I'm with you guys. Okay, here's a good point. My wrap up point, 909, is I tried so hard to create the fewest words possible to describe the highest yield points. Carly helped me with the document. So did Derek Nordstrom. So did Tasha Turzo, like these cornerstones of osteopathic orthodontics. And now, Carly is I consider you a world-class practitioner, one of the most highly trained in your field, pioneer for sure, veteran of your field. And so I just got tingles all over my body. How fortunate am I to have access to these extraordinary people and have them willing to work on this document with me. I wouldn't have made it if there was one out there. I just needed a source to give to people. And everything I saw was either too complicated or too clinical or doctory or abstract. And I was just, can we just get to the point? So this article is to the point, and it's got a 300 research paper bibliography link attached to it. And I'm going to put the document it's peer reviewed, formally, officially, bona fide, in the comments, as well as all of our, well, I'm easy to reach because you're on my Facebook page, but these gals, I'll put your email addresses there. Mm-hmm. And then I'd like to have people like ask questions, and we could do 3 or 4 or 5 of these. There's so many layers. So what is it that people want to know more about, and ideas for things, that we could do in the future. That's it. I think we're good. I want to thank you ladies so much for coming on. I'm loving this so much, just practicing being on camera and teaching and dialing it down so it's really it's complicated stuff, and yet not, right? But it is. So practicing the languaging and where it is that people need more how to explain things. I love feedback on that. So if you have any thoughts on that later. And we're gonna...
a joy to listen to. And shining. And it was such a treat to watch you. It was great.
And I made my thank you so much. We always have so much fun. I made my appointment. I haven't seen you in years, and I made an appointment with you this morning. I mean, I have to wait a month to get in with this woman. I can't even believe it, but fine.
No, I got you in like next week.
When can I book?
Book you in? I'm in March.
No, I moved you up.
You did? I thought you gave me March.
No, I did, but you have 2 appointments now. You have one in like a week, and then in March. I kept that one too.
Okay.
Harley, when can I see you?
Email me and I'll give you an appointment.
Okay.
She was just playing hard to get with me. She was playing hard to get. I'm teasing. I'm totally teasing. Okay. So we're gonna I don't even want to hit close. Like, then you guys are gonna be gone. It's hard to do this, but I'm gonna do it. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
We will be back.
Good night. Have dreams. Bye. Nice to meet you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Take care. Be well.
Good night.